Welcome to FutureProof Your Tomorrow, the podcast that takes you from AI to education and everywhere in between. I'm Michelle, and today I'm joined for a second time with Greg Chambers, CEO of the Digital States. Hi, Greg.
Hello, thanks for having me back, Michelle. It's lovely to be here.
No problem at all. In the last episode, we touched on AI and the role it plays in companies, people's lives, and the media today. And with recent developments in artificial intelligence, there are sparked fears about the potential threat to jobs in many industries, including healthcare. Up to 8 million UK jobs are at risk from the rise of artificial intelligence, or also known as AI. According to a report warning that the lowest skilled will be worst affected. Today we'll look into what the effects have been on the job market and how you can save the future of your career. So, Greg, what is your take on the current job market and the future of where we're heading?
I think that's a really multifaceted question with constituent answers that can be contradictory relative to the subject. And what I mean by that is that from even the question you asked, 8 million, I think that's a less than a tip of an iceberg. And not just obviously that, you've mentioned the effects, the transformative effects artificial intelligence is already having on the medical field. If we take that as an extrapolation and look at the job market and where we are economically, behavioral economics, what informs people's decisions, and the job market itself from companies needing to hire against certain skills, I think that we are in a time of massive flux. There isn't what I would call a kind of normal right now, because we are entering into what will be a new kind of normal, and that is nothing like the version of reality relative to the job market and occupational and careers that we have right now. So I think that a lot of that disruption, a lot of the fear that that's caused has come from the uncertainty that the changing of what that normal is creating. And that isn't just AI, that's everything across the board. That's ecology, that's 15-minute cities, that's the 2030 agenda. That's it's pervasive and representative of big change.
Do you think, are there enough job roles for people?
That's a really interesting question, and I think the reason why it throws up, or where we are right now in terms of the job market, that question is thrown up, is because it's a misnomer to approach it in, are there enough job roles for people? I don't think that we should create roles for people to fill for the sake of having the role. I think there has to be a sense of both progress and self-rewarding roles. And the reason why that's completely important and relative to this conversation, which is what we spoke about last time. It's the menial tasks that a lot of artificial intelligence is allowing humans to stop doing in exchange for what is essentially robotic and digital slavery, to free those humans up in an ideal scenario to do things which is more representative and befitting of their humanity, goals and interests.
So picking up on that, what can be done to provide more roles? Are you thinking more creative things rather than menial things?
No, because as we spoke about last time, much to many people's surprise and chagrin, there is AI is becoming increasingly efficient at the creative roles, or the humanities as we would widen that scope to be. What I actually think is what we said earlier, the economy and the job market itself as a result of the economy is going to massively change. And from that, new systems, new paradigms, new roles and new opportunities are going to be born from it that we don't currently understand right now, because we haven't completed the change into the new normal, so to speak, which is not a phrase that I coined.
And we've got a general election on the way. So what changes do you think will be made after the election has happened and we've got the government in place to improve the job market?
Yeah, so I should preface my answer to that and for the rest of this podcast by saying that I'm a big fan of truth and reality, but the problem is with reality is that it isn't always convenient. So I should ask you, would you like a truthful answer or would you like a convenient answer?
I think I'm one for truthful answers.
Well, the truth is nothing. I believe it's two heads of the same beast. I believe the last 60 years of politics and digital transformation is underlining of that. I think if we're believing words and not action, and we've had a long enough time in the modern sphere to see what that action looks like, I believe paying the change of government or a general election any credence for change whatsoever is insane and detrimental to self, particularly from a careers perspective.
And if I changed the tact and said convenient answer,
Then yeah, obviously a Tory government, as we've seen, has systemically destroyed our country since taking power. They've only had one elected prime minister at the last four, and well, I don't know what you believe about the leader of the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn and Keir Starmer, but I don't think it's a coincidence that on such a giant and pervasive spectrum that is politics, you're only left with a red or a blue, a black or a white. It is there's a great analogy. You know, Punch and Judy. Whether you support Punch or whether you support Judy, whether you support the puppet on the left or the puppet on the right, sooner or later you realise there's one guy with each hand on both puppets.
right?
And
Yeah.
that is what I believe is absolutely the case and has been demonstrated since the end of World War II in this country and America. It's why you only have Republican and Democrat. You only have Labour and Conservative. It's reductive and binary nonsense.
So, changing the questioning slightly, why are large companies such as John Lewis, Lloyd's Bank, and Burger King laying off staff?
Again, I actually know the answer to that. Do we want to go convenient or do we want to go truthful?
Let's do a mixture of both.
I don't want to sound like a negative.
No.
What's the word?
A negative Nelly.
No, yeah, a pessimist.
Yes.
I'm not. I'm an optimist at heart. But
Right.
it's only by having a close grasp of reality can we be legitimate optimists to affect positive change. The truth is, the answer to that question is because they know as well as I do, and it's not secret knowledge that a collapse is on its way. It's the same reason why the owners of these companies are selling stocks and shares at the rate the like of which we have never seen since the Depression, the Great Depression of the 20s. It's why every major stockholder that you can think of on Earth has offloaded most of their stocks. The truly large, powerful ones, I mean.
John Lewis, Lloyd's Bank, Burger King, and now tech companies, slightly different. Why are we seeing a rise in redundancies in those?
See above, same reason, because they're well aware, as we are, that an absolutely massive economic, ecologic, and societal collapse is on its way.
And I guess COVID and the poor state of the economy has played a big contribution in that part.
This is why it's absolutely unavoidable. One of the reasons it's unavoidable. Some people believe it's engineered. Some people believe it is an unfortunate circumstance of many overlapping and unfortunate coincidental attributions from COVID, lockdowns that COVID then led on to and the economic effect that had, to the emergence of AI. There are people that believe a lot of these changes are completely coincidental. Sorry, I'm not one of them.
So, I think the job cuts and redundancies, are they relative to the fact that companies are requiring AI, which is a cheaper alternative?
Yeah, that's certainly a part of it. And a very good question, because that's what I meant earlier when I said I'm actually an optimist at heart. In the long term, I'm an incredible optimist. I believe the age of where we've been living of deception, particularly in politics and economics, is over. But to get from the dark where we are now, to use a bad analogy, to the light and the future and the positivity and all that entails, is going to be painful. Change, growing pains, right? That's a term. That's a real thing. And I think right now we're experiencing growing pains, and the transition to that is going to be a painful one, but ultimately a beneficial one for everybody. It's just what that looks like in terms of the transition for economic and careers is, it requires reskilling, re-education, and a betterment of the comfort that we've been, I believe, blindly living under. There's a wonderful book that an analogy was taken from. I forget the name of the book. I'll have to come back to you on it, but many people would have heard this. It's believed by many that good times make weak people, and weak people make bad times, and bad times create good people, and good people create good times, and then good times create bad people, and the cycle continues. I think that we've had good times for a long time, and because of that, we've created a worrying scenario.
Good time.
Yeah, so a lot of comfort. We've had the economic prosperity since 1981, a casino capitalism between Thatcher and Reagan destroying the gold standard. And
Mm.
since then, we've had financial markets that have affected careers greatly because we've created something called inflated wealth, which is wealth without the necessity to back it up, which what a lot of the gold standard represented. Plus, there was a huge change to banking regulation, which allowed banks, the Federal Reserve, and fractional banking to literally print and invent money out of thin air. That
Mm.
had a negative effect, I believe, over the subsequent 2-3 decades on the job market,
Mm.
but also the economy as a whole as part of that. Look at the bailouts we had in 2008 and what that did, and how much it weakened our currency, and how bad that was. Throw in Brexit, the independence of that, the separation from the European Union, artificial intelligence, the conversation we're having, the
Yeah.
destruction of an economy, COVID, and suddenly we're in an unavoidable scenario, I believe.
Yeah. And so let's think about AI in jobs. How can people who are unsure and confused about AI get a better understanding? Because it can be a
Absolutely.
minefield of information. Where's the best place that you should say they should start?
Well, I've taken the liberty of making a list, but that
Oh.
actually, I believe, is the second part to your previous question about what companies and how, relative to the lack of opportunities in the
Mm.
job market, and what companies are doing in terms of adopting artificial intelligence practices to automate a lot of their human processes. There are quite a number of educational resources and free ones at that. It doesn't even need to be costly, that people can use to ensure that they're not necessarily just learning about the effects of AI on their role and how they can compete against it in the job market with, as you rightly said in your previous question, those redundancies and the lessening of those opportunities, rather to, as we touched on last time that we discussed this, to have an awareness of how to operate and take advantage of AI integration to current economic paradigms. So an example of that might be that somebody that's a copywriter, okay, they may look at, well, I need to compete against AI in my job, in my role, in my copywriting. That's a fool's errand. That's never going to happen. What would be better is to educate themselves as to how to operate and make themselves better in working with artificial intelligence. That's the first, I believe, part of the answer to that question. The second, I've made a list of resourcing. There are quite a few places that are available. I took the liberty of having a look and I indexed it against cost. So there are Coursera. The AIM group themselves offer opportunities about learning of the future of, which is what the podcast is about, but in terms of the future of the job market and what skills are needed to be an important, or I should say a needed player in that job market. It's all about education for me. And like I said, not just education on what AI is and how it's coming, but how to best use it for the betterment of your role in your job, in your career. You're not going to compete against, the adage, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
That. And there are, we actually do it ourselves. So alongside places like Coursera and the AIM Group, and there are academies and institutions that the AIM Group work with, which offer amazing short courses, which they don't require a 3-year commitment, a 1-year commitment, a 5-year commitment. A lot of the time, some key information relative to your role in your place in your career. You can do 2-week, 4-week courses at very low cost from places like Coursera. At the Digital States, we offer thought leadership sessions for businesses on exactly that. It's an emerging market that a lot of people are taking advantage of, but we must be careful that the information in the learning and the education is legitimate, because it's such a new area. There isn't enough, I believe, there's not enough kind of regulation and accreditation with regards to what is legitimate and what is somebody trying to make money off a buzzword, which is AI right now.
How do you stay on the ball and up to date with the information that you're sharing with people?
So I'm very, very lucky in that I have a company, and artificial intelligence is central to the successful running of that company. So it is in my own interest, both economically and for time. There is an inverse correlation between time and money, as we all know. And by using and integrating artificial intelligence into my business, which I have, and that's part of what I touched on earlier about thought leadership, we can instruct and help businesses do that, like, for example, podcasts or the AIM group or anybody wishing to lower the human labor and heighten their automation successfully. So where I have to use it in my business, it is therefore part of my economic interest to ensure that I'm aware of its abilities and latest technologies and possibilities, so it serves the business well. And I can give examples. So Sora, for example, is not out yet. It is not on general release. Sora is I believe, or will be a revolutionary multimodal AI platform, which allows things like video output for text input and queries. That is a world away from what people understand ChatGPT, which we spoke about in the last one. And I wanted to discuss that very briefly because you're already seeing the changes to that existing market. We spoke about, you said in episode 1, you'd use ChatGPT to sell your car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know now it's not free?
No.
Have you used it in the last 2 weeks?
No.
Yeah, it's not free anymore.
Oh, well,
ChatGPT 3.5 is, but ChatGPT 4, which is what everyone's going on about, is now costs. So... That change was made because of the model. Sorry, I was just trying to answer your question.
Yeah, go for it.
But it's a long answer.
Yeah.
Because of the model that they've adopted, think about this. It's genius, but it's quite recognised the last 30 years in technology, right? In Silicon Valley. Why do you think Facebook's free? Why do you think Snapchat's free? Why do you think Instagram's free? If a company came along with a product, which is the traditional way of trading in the last 100 to 150 years post-industrial revolution, said, hey, I've got this great product, why don't you buy it? Because it's a new technology, nobody needs it because they don't know that they need it. They don't know what they're missing out on. And this is completely relevant to AI and things like Neuralink.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. If you make the product free, you let people use it for a certain period of time, realize they can't live without it, and then take it away, they're going to be more inclined to pay for it, aren't they?
Do you not think perhaps if there's now a paid version of ChatGPT that other companies will jump on that bandwagon and develop free AI software?
No, purely because the cost is completely unrealistic relative to the ability to do so. So you mentioned earlier, and correctly, there's been an announcement about the government intending, they haven't yet, intending to invest 90 odd million quid in the public sector for the betterment of the private sector, so AI research.
Yeah.
90 million quid in AI is nothing. It's nothing. It's actually why, again, we touched on it last time, it's why there's a huge lawsuit between OpenAI and Elon Musk because of the development of ChatGPT 4 and everything that entailed. So on the one hand, I do believe there are opportunities there, but on the other hand, I don't believe we're doing enough to take advantage of them. So they're kind of not fulfilling of potential, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what's the timeline for AI's effects on jobs to become most pronounced?
Well, that's the wonderful thing about paying attention to the forces which govern our existence. We've been told that by Johan Harari. We know this. The answer to that is 2030. So we're going to have between right now, we're halfway through 2024 nearly, to 2030, the next 6 years will be a time of pronounced discomfort, change, evolution and migration to a new economic model, which part of which AI is a huge vehicle for that change, but it isn't alone. So too is sovereignty. So too is like we're seeing Britain leaving the European Union. We're going to start to see more of that as nation states fragment. And then I believe because of the lack of trust in old models, which we've come to rely on and the comfort that's brought, that will create, alongside COVID and everything else that happened and the invention of fake diseases, and I'm not even going to go on about jabs, that's going to create a distrust in our powerful political figures and leaders. And then I think we'll see an economic and then societal collapse as a result.
So any new government that comes in, they've got a mammoth task, because not only, as if you're saying that it's 2030 is when we'll be seeing these changes, we've also...
No, that's the end point. We're seeing the changes already.
Well, I mean, you've also got the reduction of carbon emissions and things. That's
Absolutely.
Also, that target is 2030. You've got an awful lot going on.
That's what I meant when I said we've been told the answer to that. It's not a coincidence that the end result for every one of these ecological, economical and technological targets is 2030. That is not a coincidence. So, and if you think it is, you're an ostrich with your head in the sand.
What can organisations and governments do to prepare for that deadline? It's not that far away.
Um, again, are we talking truthful or convenient? Well, when you talk about governments preparing for it, you use the term new government. I don't believe that a changing of a colour of a party changes the government. The real people that run our nation states are not elected, they are selected. That doesn't change. The same people that are running America have been running America since the 70s. They call it the deep state over there. We have the same thing here. It's why we find out after the event that previous prime ministers were paedophiles. This is a result of that. There's a reason that those people were selected to be in a position of power. You know, I don't believe that a change in name from Conservative to Labour results in a change for the people in government. I don't believe there's any real change there. And I think the last 70 years have shown that.
So, why is the relationship between AI and jobs both a challenge and an opportunity for society? And how can we ensure a smooth transition for workers? Is it just down to education?
No, and that's a wonderful question, and I welcome you asking it because it allows me to be optimistic rather than the naysaying cynicism and pessimism about the short-term future. It allows to be optimistic in the long-term future. So I think to answer your question first, there's two factors to it. There's the disruption, which you quite rightly, how can we minimize the disruption and better prepare for it? And then there's the kind of education and taking advantage of it thereafter. And I think that it's as much disruptive as the legalization of slavery would be. So think about, from a traditional economic and societal standpoint, for jobs, the careers and the job market, what it would look like if suddenly slavery was legal and people consented to being slaves. That would have a giant change on not only the job market, but the economy as a whole. Artificial intelligence and the integration, and the larger and larger as year goes by, the further integration and use of it, so the more we rely on it, that's only becoming more important. So do you remember the advent of the internet? Do you remember in the mid-90s, there was a transitional period where some companies and people had the internet, some didn't? We saw very quickly that companies that had the internet were outperforming those that didn't have the internet on a very basic sense. This is, take that idea, take what you've seen, times it by 1 billion, because this is that equivalent with technology, with the advent of free work, free labor, free automation, which is where I use the term digital slavery. Suddenly, artificial intelligence for free can do jobs that you were previously paying humans to do. So on the disruption level, huge. I don't think since the Industrial Revolution, I don't think that we've seen a change like it in the short term. But in the long term, I believe that is absolutely fantastic and brilliant for humanity in the long term. And to use the analogy like fire, fire can be used to heat your meals and keep you warm, or it can be used to burn your neighbour's house down. It is all about how we use it. Knives, they can cut a steak or they can stab you in the heart. If we use artificial intelligence for the benefit of humanity and bring in ideas such as universal basic income to cover what the automation of AI, or the slavery as I call it, will create, it will allow those displaced by that to hopefully go into roles, careers, opportunities and lives which is more befitting of their human value and what they want to do as infinite creations, not what they need to do to make an X amount of money to cover a roof over their head. We're past that point now as beings, I hope.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot to take on board. Developing AI systems for healthcare, what ethical considerations should be prioritised?
So that's again a fascinating question, because we've already agreed and discussed, and I think most of society would, with even a brief understanding of how AI is revolutionising every sector. Medical, in terms of our humanity and how we treat and maintain our health, is crucial to that. Have you heard of CRISPR?
No, do tell more.
So CRISPR is a gene editing technique which has been around for about 10 years, and it's already been used successfully and illegally. There's really famous cases where private scientists have taken a hell of a lot of money off very wealthy people to eradicate known genetic disorders in their genetic history and family timeline. There was a case in China of a doctor that helped an Australian couple. He ended up having 9 years in prison, but he changed the gene that was responsible for hereditary, I think it was Alzheimer's, in that couple. Now, that's CRISPR alone. What a lot of medical institutions privately are talking about doing now in the future of CRISPR is integrating CRISPR with artificial intelligence, which will allow CRISPR is basically gene editing technology. So if you can use artificial intelligence with gene editing technology, apart from eradicating diseases and illness and anything which is like objectively bad for the human condition, there are worrying, I believe, but it depends how you look at it, there are worrying uses for the application with artificial intelligence. So I don't just want to eradicate disease. I want my son to be a super athlete. So I'm going to make his right leg genetically better than anyone else. Like, this is a real thing that's happening with the introduction of artificial intelligence with medical technology like CRISPR. And that's on a cellular genetic level. If we think about treatment and what artificial intelligence looks like in diagnostics, how many times have you seen a GP and they've got your diagnosis wrong? Artificial intelligence, as we discussed last time, particularly from a learned language model and how it grows its intelligence, is going to become errorless, completely errorless. Humans are fallible, doctors are humans. As artificial intelligence becomes more of a part in the medical field, those mistakes are going to vanish. The problem is it's also going to throw up a lot of the problems that people do to themselves, which they hide from those doctors because they won't be able to hide them anymore. Insurance, people say they don't smoke. Artificial intelligence thinks otherwise. Because there's going to be technology for artificial intelligence to read the data of your biometrics to tell people that you smoke, regardless of what your answer is, or that you like a beer on a Friday, or that you eat hamburgers, or that you eat too much red meat and have a carbon footprint. Eventually, the most important parts of the human condition are going to vanish, and I believe we'll end up like binary droids because we won't be able to retain our humanity because everything within our bodies, from our genes to our blood flow to our pathogens and everything else, graphene oxide as part of that, is going to be studied and reported beyond our control or knowledge.
That does cause a bit of a problem, doesn't it, really, if you're considering that you're handing over every single element of your DNA to artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and that, absolutely.
Where are the barriers? How do we protect ourselves if they are going that deep?
I'm absolutely with you. So this is why it's frightening in the short term, because right now there aren't any. So one of the reasons, again, I keep touching on it because it's a landmark case. One of the reasons for the OpenAI versus Elon Musk lawsuit is Elon Musk has been trying for many, many years to wave a big flag, to put a fork in the ground, to get some of, what did you call it? I'd call it regulation and parameters. What did you call it?
Barriers.
Barriers, exactly. Some safety checks and points and balances. They're not currently there. And that's why in the short term, when there's not enough known about the effects, it's worrying because you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? So if we realise the need for those barriers and those checks and balances, but only at a point where they've been needed, there aren't any checks and balances. It's too late.
Yeah, no safeguarding.
Precisely.
So what's your opinion on HR and hiring managers using applications like ChatGPT to filter out CVs and covering letters?
It's a really interesting point, that, because I'm actually hiring myself at the moment. So I'm not only commenting on this, I'm living it. Wow. So I think the answer to that's twofold. So firstly, ChatGPT 4 and its widespread use, and now I think it's like $20 or something. But that's like a text-based, usable example of artificial intelligence that people have already integrated into their daily lives. That is like a drop in a proverbial ocean of what human resources, or HR, can use AI for. So you mentioned CVs. Many people would argue, and I'm one of them, that CVs themselves are out of date. Like, there are much better ways to get that information across to a prospective employer. And I believe artificial intelligence and the multi-modality of that, when you start to apply it to video, to text. We spoke about the the Princess Catherine video and the furore around that in episode 1, for example. And as we start to apply artificial intelligence algorithms, processes, and systems, which are only getting better, to multimodal outputs, not just text like CVs, I think we're going to see the decision making taken out. It's what I mentioned. I used the word droid earlier. I think we're going to start to see the humanity taken out of that selection process. You might speak to a HR manager, and they may give you a story about how they were interviewing somebody, and there were 5 CVs that were of a relative similar quantity for the job qualification, and they just had a feeling. You may have heard that. That is going to go. The human to human aspect of making decisions off one's energy. You know that analogy? I just had a feeling, or I'm a good judge of character. All of these human is like these sayings that we have. These are from people to people interaction. I believe largely that's going to be taken out of the equation and become much more statistical and binary in its approach.
It's just an explosion of things going on.
There is. It affects so much. And do you know what, though? Again, that's a really good... When you say there's just so much to it, there is. I believe in the long term, why it's a good thing to answer the question after short-termism of a change, which is going to create problems, growing pains, right, is that we will then be in a true meritocracy.
You said yourself you're actually hiring at the moment. On the flip side of that, those candidates that have started using AI to help them form their CVs and covering letters and personal statements, how can you tell that they've been doing that?
That's the wonderful thing about knowing your business well. No AI platform on the face of the earth, not even my own wife, who I share everything with, knows my business like I do. So if somebody... or the role, I should say. The business is a larger umbrella, but the role I'm hiring for, to hire for that role successfully, I have to know it well. I have to know what it needs to do. I have to know the time it needs to do it in. I have to know everything, the pay, what it's worth, the skills, the verticals, the lot. So I can see no one knows that better than me, not even a machine, not a person. So I can see in an application, the way that role is understood by the author is going to depend on their understanding. And I can very easily see, because of my differentiation of my company relative to the market, whether they're appealing to the market, which is going to be AI, because it's their understanding of what agencies look like, for example, or whether it's the human understanding of the job description that I have written, which is going to be personal to the role I am offering. But it's a great question, because I've literally been in that process. You can see CVs and covering letters and portfolios that have been aided, polished, and outputted by generative AI or learned language models, or even multimodal models, and you can see where a human has done all of it. And I'm always going with the latter.
I'm always telling people when I'm helping them develop their own personal statements and their covering emails, to look at the key points that an employer is looking for.
Absolutely.
And then make sure that they are woven into the text.
Couldn't agree more. And actually, something relative, completely on the money for this podcast, and that, what you just said, I'm in such agreement with it. I had a conversation where I was giving constructive feedback to somebody who didn't get a role. And they said to me, well, that's okay. I had sent the same CV to 2 other people, 2 other companies. And I said, well, let me be of assistance. Every CV you send, any role, whether it's contracting, a full-time position, or particular hours, I believe they should be absolutely tailored to the person, role, or organization that you are applying to. And that sounds so obvious, but you would not believe how many people will send the same covering letter, CV, portfolio to a multitude of different organizations. Why would you want different organizations that are different in their definition to look at the same thing and then need them to apply their difference to your CV? Wouldn't it be much more targeted? I'm in the business of targeting. Wouldn't it be much more targeted to target your CV or offering or portfolio, whatever that looks like, to the role you're applying for? Surely. Listeners, do that. There's free knowledge there, and you will do far better in your careers as a result. There is no doubt about it.
Definitely don't do a copy and paste job.
Hell no.
Especially where you leave the someone else's name on the top of the email. I bet you've had that as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so I should say it's a time thing. It's not a reductive thing. But as soon as I see a typo, or something like that, something which is indicative of a
Yeah.
lack of attention to detail.
Yes.
The roles and the success of what we do is all about an attention to detail, because as you rightly say, so much affects so many other roads and trees and
Yeah.
branches. That attention to detail is crucial.
Yeah.
So if I can see that somebody hasn't made attention to detail for their own offering, for their own benefit,
Yeah.
how could I expect them to do it for the business?
Yeah. And would I guess ChatGPT or AI would have a way of filtering that out?
You would hope, but like I touched on earlier, when you look at the difference between artificial intelligence polished and human created applications, normally, if they've relied on it too much, you can see that there is a more of a general. So artificial intelligence learns by data. So the more data it has, the better and faster it gets at learning. So you can see its understanding of whatever it is it's outputting. The more general it is, the more chance it's going to be of artificial intelligence on a very basic level.
Yeah.
So there does become a balance in its use against its human creation as the author. You rightly say using it to avoid typos,
Yeah.
but not using it to create it from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's actually a really good point, because I mentioned it earlier about the importance of not competing against AI in a role or a career, but integrating it.
Yeah.
Make it better. If you can't beat them, join them, you see.
So, with AI being used in job hunting and maybe even house hunting, car buying, is it becoming more and more difficult for young people to get their foot in the door?
Do you mean to careers or home ownership or
Well, I mean,
independence, moving out of their parents' house?
Let's focus on careers for
Absolutely.
now. But yeah, I mean, it's just, is it becoming more difficult for young people to get their foot in the door for their own career?
I think so, but only in the transitional phase. And I used the analogy last time, and I stick by it. We everybody has heard of the haves and the have-nots. That is going to become the have-yachts and the have-nots. So the destruction of the middle class and the strengthening of the two binaries of society is going to continue to take place relative to the meritocracy that I spoke about earlier. So yes, I believe in the short term, absolutely, until we have a solution for that giant problem. Many people have proposed universal basic income, for example, as a solution to that problem. I don't know enough. I'm not a master's or PhD grad in economics, so it'd be very difficult for me to tell you if universal basic income would work. But you're absolutely right. I certainly believe in the next half a decade, 3 to 5 years, certainly. It's certainly more difficult for younger people to start their careers in entry-level positions, because many entry-level positions are being automated exactly by AI.
Yeah, I mean, it's what is it? Is it just AI that's the biggest hurdle for young people starting their careers?
No. I think that economic disparity is a huge one. So I'm not sure. It's slightly. I mean, careers related to economics, obviously, but the current generation that are currently in university, that are about to enter the job market, are the first generation in human history to be economically worse off than their parents.
Yeah.
And that is a really, really big deal. We've been measuring that for 300 years.
And
every generation for 300 years has been economically better off than their parents until 12 years ago. And that, I think, speaks volumes. So not only are they competing against digital slavery and the integration of artificial intelligence, which is only going one way, they're also competing against a number of other factors, such as the destruction of their earning potential due to the problems with inflation and the rules around the previous generations and home ownership. That's why the cost of homes in the UK have become removed from its basis. It's crazy. There are houses in London for £36 million. That's not realistic.
And I think that also you've got the rise of something called the 0 hours contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's just a moral question for me.
Yeah.
I believe they are disgusting, and the only reason they exist is because the people that they benefit are the same people which sponsor the puppets that I called them earlier, which allow them to do that in government by passing laws through the House of Lords which benefit them.
As a business owner, do you see the viability of the 0 hours contract or
No.
no?
No. Businesses are nothing without humans. And if we're screwing humans, we're screwing businesses. It's why I've had the opportunity and the offers of 0 hours contracts, and I will never, ever, ever, ever do it. I will never put somebody on that. It is, I think it's destructive to the people that are working in it for their mental health. So let's say that you only consider commerce.
Yeah.
Let's say that you have no humanity to your heart, and let's say that you don't care about people. And at this point, you are just a decision-making robot. If you hire somebody on a 0 hours contract and you need them to apply themselves,
Yeah.
you're going to ruin your own business, because by giving them a 0 hours contract, you are negatively affecting their mental health. How will you expect someone to perform for the benefit of your organization if you are the one destroying their mental health?
Yeah.
You can't expect that. The other side of the coin, which has been leveled at me a lot, is, well, that doesn't matter for shelf stacking. That doesn't matter where you don't need to apply yourselves. Correct. That's what the digital slavery is for. So make a choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Invest in the robots to do the jobs that you don't have enough respect for the people to do, and free those people, or give those people proper contracts.
If you
Pick a struggle.
If you were 16 today and were about to finish your GCSEs, what would you focus on to get a foothold on your career?
That's an interesting question to answer, because it involves an element of hindsight. I'm not the same person now at 38 that I was when I was 16.
Yeah.
So am I answering that with a 16-year-old self or with a 38-year-old hindsight self?
Let's think of the hindsight. What things would you have changed to help you get to where you are now?
I would have paid more attention to the factors which govern my environment, and because we are creatures of our environment, the factors which then govern my life, and how to use them for the benefit of my and my loved ones' existence. That's what I would do with hindsight.
And if you're talking to a 16-year-old who's just about to finish GCSEs in school this year, what advice would you give them?
I don't mean to be funny, but I'm quite light-hearted. But the advice I'd give them would be to enjoy the current paradigm while they can. Enjoy the current comforts while they can.
Yeah.
And in a wider sense, in the job market, I would urge every single young person to either educate themselves around the new paradigm that we discussed already, the new economy. So that's artificial intelligence, that's the impact of Neuralink, that's the impact of automation. So not just AI. Robots that stack shelves, there's an element of AI, but a lot of that's automation. Administrative tasks with secretaries. You might have noticed the EA sector, executive assistants, right? In the finance sector, there's not half as many roles as there used to be, because a lot of these roles have been automated. So I would urge every single 16-year-old or young person that's currently entering the job market to educate themselves as cost effectively as they can. And that's not going to a red brick university like I did.
Yeah.
It's a disproportionate output against its cost. It's as simple as that. But I would, on platforms I mentioned earlier, university.com, Coursera, the AIM group, I would certainly sharpen skills in a cost-effective manner. And when I say skills, I mean the understanding of tomorrow's world, of automation, of artificial intelligence, of a universal basic income. And if you're not doing that, you need to be self-sufficient and start your own business. I believe there's one or the other. You need to make yourself invaluable to businesses you want to be in, and you do that with education. Knowledge is power, right? Or you become self-sufficient and you build something which you offer and you're responsible for, so you're not having to rely on other people or digital slaves.
What do you think the fate of the current generation is? Do you think they'll be able to survive the takeover? If so, how?
So that's a kind of multifaceted question in terms of what the definition of survival is. But I fundamentally believe, and it's going to be interesting to watch this back in 7 years, if I'm still about, by 2030 and the end of 2030 as we move into 2031, I don't believe there's going to be more than 2.5 billion people on this planet. So the short answer to your question is no. I believe the vast majority of populations are going to decrease in the next 5 to 7 years. I really, really do. But separately from that, I believe humans are most, if we look at human history, this tends to point to this idea. We're at our best under pressure. Necessity is the mother of invention. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
So if you look at, there's a great documentary made. Do you remember when those 12 Thai children got stuck in that cave
Yeah.
a few years ago? Similar incident with the Cuban miners, I think it was. The best of humanity, I believe, and our best in terms of our output, so what we can do for society, is shown in those moments. So those people, yes, they will absolutely survive the transition economically. Whether or not we survive it physically is another story completely.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question now is less whether AI can be useful, but rather how fast and in what manner employers will use it.
Yeah, absolutely, which is already happening. I like we touched on last time. I use it a lot, and I am by no means. I'm a small business, right? So I'm not using it to the extent of many large corporations and businesses. And it affects everything from, like you quite rightly mentioned, human resources, hiring, careers, right through to operations, delivery, automation, management, output. That, as we touched on in episode 1, there isn't a sector which is unaffected by this. It's why you're seeing massive, huge changes to the financial market. There isn't even a trading floor anymore where people are screaming and waving, which was the normal for many years, and that was what underpinned our economy.
Yeah.
That's changed in itself, so you can expect to see that across the board.
Can job reskilling beat AI technology when it comes to the future?
I don't. I think the word "be" implies an area of competition which is reductive. I think nothing. It's impossible to stop the growth and integration of artificial intelligence into all of our lives. Driving here today, it's going to affect transport, it, airlines, planes in the sky, traffic lights, like everything. So the answer is you're never going to outpace that. There's a great idea that, so if we break it down to an individual looking for a role, can an individual learn anything quicker than AI? No, it can't. Of course it can't. Because it needs to sleep, it needs to eat, it needs to go to the toilet, it needs to have interactions, it needs to do a lot of things that artificial intelligence does not need to do. So the answer to your question is absolutely not. But rather change the paradigm, change the view. It's not something you should be competing against. That's like competing against gravity. Use it. Integrate it for your benefit rather than your destruction. And that is education. That is learning. That is knowledge, and that is power.
So how can these education and training programs help humans stay competitive in an AI-driven world?
Because I believe as artificial intelligence, as we're discussing throughout this podcast, becomes more and more important for businesses, ecologies, and societies, the people that govern and program and use and deploy that artificial intelligence become even more important than that. So you can be a victim of the machines, or you can be a master of them, to borrow a Matrix-like statement there. The answer to that is to accumulate and grow your knowledge, merit, and worth to be invaluable to the integration of that. Nobody that is integrating, no business that integrates artificial intelligence is doing so without an expert behind its integration. Become that expert.
So, I mean, we've already touched on this. The government yet to bring forward any legislation specifically aimed at the rise of AI.
Which is a really big deal right now, and something which is discussed at length. It's a good point to raise.
Yeah, last month it announced plans to spend more than £90 million on new AI research hubs.
Yeah.
Looking into ways of using AI responsibly across areas such as healthcare.
Yeah, that's a public relations statement.
Yeah.
In effect, that's meaningless.
Yeah. So what role should governments and regulatory bodies play in shaping the development and use of AI technology?
Absolutely. That's something I'm really excited about, and that's why I mentioned it as a PR exercise.
Yeah.
They should take it seriously and put serious money behind it. That 90 million should be about 90 billion. It's a PR exercise. People hear 90 million, they go, oh my God, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's not. Not for things like the NHS or AI integration and growth and learning. Like, it's not. If they were serious about it, like, take it seriously is the answer to the question.
Yeah.
That's what they should do. They should take it seriously and replicate, back up those words with action. And that is serious investment, of which 90 million quid is. That's, to borrow an analogy, you've broken your car, you take it into a mechanic. and your fella goes, I'm going to give you a screw to help with the fixing of your car. You're going to say, well, what the it doesn't do anything. Like, what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
It's meaningless unless he comes with a mechanic and money. You know, like it's a PR exercise. The 90 million is not doing anything.
So people who haven't adopted the AI technology yet at risk of being left behind?
I would argue yes, unless their offering is contingent on the separation of their offering from technology or automation or AI. Absolutely.
Yeah. And some companies have embraced the reskilling challenge. Only a handful have done so effectively.
Yeah.
Even their efforts have often been subscale and of limited impact. So that need for reskilling revolution is apparent.
Absolutely.
What must companies do to make it happen?
So I liken this a lot to the app. Do you remember once upon a time at like 2010, 2011, just before the Olympics, everything was an app. Everyone wanted an app.
Yeah.
I got ridiculous amount of phone calls. Can you build me an app? I need an app.
Yeah.
When you drill down to it, it was because a lot of businesses, they didn't want to be left behind. And we were in the age of building apps.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time when I would drill down and say, why?
Yeah.
Why do you feel you need an application? Most of the answer tended to be like a mobile native application.
Yeah.
Most of the answer was because everyone else is.
Mm.
And not enough people are thinking about its day-to-day actual value of what it's actually doing.
Yeah.
Because it's become a buzzword that people, like you rightly said in the previous question, people are becoming fearful of being left behind. So because of the rush to not be left behind, because of the rush to be part of something, a lot of the research, work, integration and what it is that you're trying to get it to do is misplaced. It's wrong. And then as a result, sadly, people lose faith in AI as a result when all they've done is implement it badly. And the difference between the two, I think, is as night and day.
Excellent.
It's no different with staff. If you might need staff and you might rush out and hire help. If you don't put enough information into understanding who that is and what they're good at, you're going to hire the wrong person. And that's going to detrimentally affect your business. And then you're going to lose faith in hiring when all it is hiring the right person to begin with. It's the same as deploying artificial intelligence at value correctly. And that's why you need experts, which is why for careers, education, expertise comes back around.
Well, Greg, that's amazing. Very, very interesting as ever. And hopefully this won't be the last time we have you back.
Hopefully not. I love the studio and I always love chatting to you myself. So I'm really grateful for you inviting us back in.
So thanks very much. And thanks for listening to the FutureProof Your Tomorrow podcast, brought to you by the AIM Group. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review. And if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. Don't forget to follow and turn on post notifications. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for having us.